Welcome back. So, this is a long time coming, but this is my top 20 albums of the mid-year of 2024. Now, these are not, if when I put these albums on this board, that does not mean they're the number one album of the year. These are just 20 albums that I find I've gravitated towards the most, I find had the best quality, and the ones I have been replaying consistently. According to my album of the year statistics, I have reviewed, I believe, 104 albums. Probably half of them are on the channel. So I will be linking my album of the year actual webpage where you can take a look at some albums that I'm not going to review, but I decided to give some rankings and reviews, very short form reviews there as well. So also what I'm going to be doing is that if the title of the album is really long, I'm not going to write out the whole thing, and I'll be jumping back and forth, trying to write all these things down. So I think I should be able to fit this all onto the board. And you can talk amongst yourselves while I write it down like we're in a classroom or something. So, Arooj Aftab. So this is Night Rain. So I just talked about this album pretty recently. But this album is just so beautiful. It's so tranquil. It's so mesmerizing. And Arooj Aftab is a Pakistani singer and songwriter. And this really mixes kind of folk kind of aspects, but as well as a little bit of classical and jazz kind of mixed into it. If you really want to get a good idea of what this album sounds like, obviously the first track on here really gives you an idea of what you're kind of bracing for. But it is such a beautiful and just transportive record that I just really enjoy, and it's really nice as well if you're going for like a night walk or something like that. It is such a nice album to set your mind at ease and just allow you just to breathe. It's a fantastic record for that. So then number two. Now I know I definitely can't fit this all onto the board. That is not a P, that is not an R, that is a P. There we go. I'll put perceive it dot dot dot. So this is Shabaka, and this is Perceive Its Beauty, Acknowledge Its Grace. This is the only album this year that I've given a 10 out of 10. While I may be wavering on just a little bit about the 10 out of 10 being a little bit too out there, I still think this album is absolutely incredible. And it kind of falls in the same lane, honestly, as Arooj Aftab, where it feels very just somber. It feels very calming. It feels very meditative. And especially with the flute instrumentation that's going all through this record, it really just brings this feeling of just peace. And the features as well, like Moses Sumney, for example, brings some amazing performances, and it really does allow for the jazz genre to be a little bit more flexible and also to be a little bit more honestly accessible too, especially with all these features. They all do a fantastic job, and overall, like, this album's only about 40 minutes long, and you get an incredible experience in that 40-minute runtime. So then we go to number three. I know I'm definitely not going to fit this one. I'm just going to put the band name on this one. So, Knocked Loose, and the album is You Won't Go Before You're Supposed to. And I will be honest, this is probably the most played album of this year so far. And it is getting better and better with each and every listen. Just under 30 minutes of just some pulverizing metalcore. The screams, then the art, like the vocalist is such a higher pitch in the voice. But what I've noticed is that with that higher pitch and the higher tone, it's actually more understandable of what he's saying, and it actually sounds a lot more pissed off than just having these guttural screams and these death growls. This is an album that is genuinely one of the most pissed off albums I've ever heard in my life. It is an amazing, fun, sometimes terrifying thrill ride that if you're not into the metalcore genre, I would even say just try it. And even if you get the first couple of tracks, you will get an idea of how absolutely menacing and how pulverizing this album can be. So this next one is actually a brand new addition to my list, and it's good that I kind of waited so that way I can add two more albums to this list that I have really enjoyed. So this is Remi Wolfe, just released Big Ideas. This is probably one of the catchiest pop records of the year for me. And it's so good for the summer. And what's really nice about it is that the hooks, especially on songs like Pitiful, like are so simple, but they're so effective. And I can picture this album working so good in the summer. And sometimes it brings these kind of late 2000s alt rock kind of pop, like pop rock aesthetics that just really mesh well. And Remi Wolfe does have a great voice, and the writing on here is also really fantastic. I know Remi Wolfe dropped an album a little while ago that got a lot of critical acclaim. This one as well. But this is my first time experiencing Remi Wolfe, and I'm going to have to go back to that previous record because I really enjoyed this one. So now we get to another one that was really close to a 10. I'll just put Adrianne Lenker. So Adrianne Lenker, and this is Bright Future. Just a perfect example of how simplicity can make some of the most impactful, emotional, and personal songs and songwriting I have heard this entire year. Real House, the first track on this album, hit me in the guts, like so emotionally. And the way that the storytelling and the songwriting is conveyed, it just really tugs at your heartstrings. And how simple, how minimal it is, it just feels like you are in the room with the artist and you just feel the emotion, you feel the pain, you feel the heaviness of the vocals, the heaviness of the writing. But overall, there's so many more moments on this record that kind of go into that folk, sometimes into like Americana kind of feel to it as well. Overall, this is just an amazing, emotive, and extremely powerful record that does so much with so little. So then we move on to the complete opposite. I could definitely put this one in here. Full thing. So it's Yeat with 2093. It released, I believe, all the way back in February. And usually my big problem is that around January or February, while there is some great records, they often get left to the side. 2093 is not one of them. I just listened to it in full maybe about last week. And the way that Yeat has evolved as an artist still is quite impressive. These songs are actually a lot more like structured, fleshed out, and more kind of calculated songs that have these amazing moments, very versatile vocal moments. The beats are very futuristic. They are very kind of Matrix feeling. And overall, like this record really is a renaissance moment for Yeat and maybe possibly the peak of what rage music may become. Now, I don't really know if I consider this rage music at this point. This is definitely more falling into more of the psychedelic trap direction. But the way that Yeat tackles it is just his very own distinct way. And it just sounds so futuristic. It feels sleek. It feels modern, but it feels so catchy. And it just feels so incredibly just amazing, especially on multiple listens. A power trip. More is honestly one of my favorite Yeat songs now. There's More and Now. Both of them are going back and forth, which is the best Yeat song for me ever. It's a really tough thing to go with. But overall, 2093 is a great experience, and I just kicked my stand. So this is another edition that I literally just listened to this today. And sure, like, a lot of the times when you add on something like brand new, like your instinctual thing is just like, this is the greatest thing ever. But I think with these two records, like, I feel like these are going to have staying power. So this is BERWYN, and this is Who Am I? So this is, I believe, his third album, or maybe his debut or a debut album at this point, because he may have a couple mixtapes. UK pop rap done amazingly well. And one of the best things about this album to me is how personal and how just really honest the writing is. In particular, Immigration Song is a fantastic example. You get a lot of topics about alcoholism, about immigration, about the police, how he kind of was moved from Trinidad and Tobago over into London, and how that's affected his childhood, how it's affected his life. Overall, like, you really get an idea of who BERWYN is and what he's kind of going for. And there is some amazing vocal and catchy moments on here. Definitely more in that pop R&B lane. I'm thinking I'm Drowning as an example. But like Leave Me by the River or Take Me by the River, has the Bon Iver feeling of just auto-tune vocals by itself. I don't know why I gravitate to those songs so much, but that's hits me in the gut with how emotional that can feel. And overall, like, this album, I just really enjoy it. I like how poppy it is. I like how catchy it is, but it does have the substance to it that does make me really want to return to it upon repeat listens. So then we get to Vince Staples with Dark Times. Will I be able to fit the whole thing here? Sure. So Vince Staples' Dark Times continues his streak through the 2020s, bringing something that's more contemplative, bringing something that's a little bit quieter. But with Dark Times, I feel like the accessibility is stronger than ever, and I feel like the catchiness of the choruses is actually striking out a lot more. This also, I feel, is Vince Staples' one of his most personal records, and he's always been personal in a lot of his records, but I feel like this dives more into the mind state and the psyche of Vince Staples, and also him trying to find love, and also trying to kind of keep arm's reach of his neighborhood, all this kind of stuff like that. It really is a really great record, and this is probably his best album out of the 3 albums he has released throughout the decade so far. It is a really, really strong showing. So then we move on to Friko. So I'm definitely not going to be able to write this whole thing down. Where we've been. So Friko, Where We've Been and Where We're Going, I believe it is. So this album, again, was a very early find in the year. But this just feels like some really I almost would call it like prep school rock, where it definitely feels very polished. It feels very clean. It feels very kind of almost garagey in a way, but also artsy in a way. It's kind of a mix of the two. And the way I kind of described it, as I said before, is like it just feels like a Wes Anderson film. It feels so warm. It feels like the fall. It feels like you're walking through just a trail of fallen leaves, and you're seeing cardinals, you're seeing robins just kind of flying around everywhere, and it's the evening, and like the sky is orange and the sun is setting. It just really feels like a fall album, so I can't wait to actually experience this album in the fall. I haven't listened to this album too much, but I feel like once it hits October, I'm going to find a perfect place to walk a trail and listen to this album, and it's probably going to skyrocket up my list because of that. So then we move on to Vampire Weekend. I guess we're changing over to black. Vampire Weekend. So Vampire Weekend, Only God Was Above Us. So this album takes the kind of the more ornate and kind of more lush instrumentation, which they've always had, of Father of the Bride, but it kind of throws it into a harsher lens of Modern Vampires of the City. Modern Vampires of the City is my favorite Vampire Weekend album, and this is following very close behind it. The way that the album is a little bit more kind of fun, kind of bombastic feeling, kind of a little bit more explosive. It kind of reminds me of the bigger moments and kind of the more popular moments of Modern Vampires, but also a little bit of Contra there as well. But this album overall, it's just an amazing return to form. And while I like Father of the Bride, Vampire Weekend with Only God Was Above Us feels so much more of a return to form. And it shows, even with the loss of probably one of the most prominent members of Rostam, they have not lost a step in the slightest. So then we're going to move up to the list here. So I'm going to have to stand up again. And give me a brief moment. I'll put that. So Novo Amor with Collapse List. So I have this whole 2020s decade. I have been listening to a lot of Novo Amor. His album in 2020, I've started to absolutely love. It's become one of my favorite records of all time. And I was really anticipating Collapse List. And I was 100% satisfied. And what I really like about this record now is that it feels, especially in the writing, is a lot more personal. It's a lot more heartfelt. And it's something that I can really get behind and understand. It's kind of, there's one song in particular that I really gravitate towards. It's like, your feet go where your mind wants, or your feet was supposed to. It's just like you have a set journey or you have a set thing in mind, but life takes you in an entirely different direction. I can relate to that so much. And it just really kind of delves more into the mental and emotional state that Novo more is in. And with that, this is one of the most emotionally potent records of the year as well, along with Adrianne and Lenker. Absolutely beautiful record. Another one that is very, very emotionally potent. And we're just going to keep jumping back and forth with colors, I guess. I'm not really looking at my pen. So, Dude Central, Where the Butterflies Go. So, I did a review on this one, and I have listened to this maybe a couple more times after that review. It is still one of the most sad albums I have ever heard, and involving the loss of his mother, and the way that it's recorded, the way that it's so DIY, it just feels like, again, like I'm sitting in the room. He's recording. He has a guitar with the microphone. I'm hearing all the mistakes. I'm hearing all of the audio kind of hiccups. But it just adds to how vulnerable and how in the moment this record really is. This is going to really resonate with me over the decade. And while it is a very sad and very kind of somber listen, again, I still highly recommend you listen to it at least once, because it did really made me think about my life a good amount and the people that are in my life. And I think that's really important to note, because music is that powerful. So then we move on to Charli XCX with BRAT. So BRAT is kind of the return back to that hyper pop kind of sound that she's been going for with How I'm Feeling Now and the Charli record. But I feel like out of the three, this is the most accessible. It is one of the most catchiest records of the year, and it is incredibly danceable. I know Charli said she wanted to make this record so you can dance to it, and goodness, you can. It is fantastic. Sympathy is a Knife, one of my favorite songs of the year. She really knows how to write a hook. And A.G. Cook on production is just bringing some of my favorite production of the year. His album was also very good, but with Charli in tow, it just really accentuates the record to be such a fun and also personal experience. Amongst all the fun that you're having with this record, you do get moments like I might say something stupid. I believe it's Okay to Cry, it's called, where it's kind of just more of a track towards the loss of Sophie. These songs do pack emotional punches amongst having so much fun with your listening experience. So I highly recommend BRAT, as everyone else has. So, this album I have returned back to very recently, and it's Quadeca with Scrapyard. So Quadeca, coming off of I Didn't Mean to Haunt You, goes back to something a little bit more kind of in that rap kind of feel, but also brings the experience of I Didn't Mean to Haunt You. There's songs on here that are actually a lot better than I Didn't Mean to Haunt You. You Don't Know Me Like That. Guess Who? Too Many Friends. There is some incredibly catchy and incredibly just interesting experiments that just work out so flawlessly, especially Texas Blue as an example at the end. Quadeca has really evolved as an artist, and it shows the incredible amount of versatility and how much better he's getting at his craft. Just in short distances, it's growing so exponentially. And I am really excited to see where he goes, because this is like a mixtape. So I can only imagine what the next album is going to sound like. This could be an incredible, incredible experience coming forward. Next we have, and we're getting pretty close to the end. This one's pretty recent. Omar Apollo with God Said No. So this is kind of falling more into that pop R&B kind of thing. And I started listening to Omar Apollo around Ivory. Again, what I really like about this record that I said in my previous videos is that I like that it still carries the pop sensibilities, but it has that lush instrumentation. Empty is a great example of that. And I believe it's Plane Trees with Mustafa. Those two songs have really stuck out to be my favorites of the year. And there's some amazing, amazing catchy pop cuts on here like Spite. and drifting as well. There is some incredible moments on here. This is such a catchy album for the summer. I can only imagine when I go on vacation, this is probably the first album I'm going to gravitate towards. All right. So then we move on to... This is Lorelei. So this is Lorelei with Box for Buddy, Box for Star. Another example of a DIY project. This definitely sounds like only one person made this thing, but it kind of really has a mix of everything, especially when it comes to kind of that bedroom pop and lo-fi pop. There's even parts on here that goes into like country and Americana sometimes. But This is Lorelei just really makes some really catchy and just really quirky pop music. And I don't know why it scratches an itch for me so much, but it just feels like so warm. It feels so fun. It feels so quirky. It feels so different. And I just really gravitate towards that. And the vocals may not be the best, but they just, I don't know how, but it just adds that DIY aesthetic where it just feels, it's charming. That's actually a good way to put it. This album is just incredibly, incredibly charming. And if you're looking for some really charming pop, bedroom pop, this is Lorelei with Box for Buddy, Box for Star is a really good example of that. So then we move on to Chelsea Wolfe with She Reaches Out to She, Reaches Out to She. So industrial rock, industrial metal. This album, the way that it is mixed, is so incredible to hear in a headphones. Phone speakers don't do this album justice. The way that this album sounds can feel so crushing, but it can feel so absolutely just calculated and it just sounds like perfection. And Chelsea Wolfe's very melodramatic vocals with these very industrial, darker sounding beats and darker sounding production just makes for something that was made for the nighttime and made for some really fun and also just really unpredictable and kind of heavy moments that I didn't honestly expect. This is my first Chelsea Wolfe record, and this was a really good first impression for me. So then we get to... Come on. Reach. Serpentwithfeet with Grip. So this is probably one of the first albums I was so incredibly excited for. And it definitely lived up to my expectations for me. Serpentwithfeet, again, just brings incredible, incredible vocals and vocal performances. This is kind of the sound that Deacon had, but I think it's a little bit more executed and a little bit more catchier. Definitely a lot more catchier. It's only 10 tracks. It's very trim. It gets to the point. But I really enjoy this record, and it's so incredibly catchy. And going back to it, it has not changed. There's so many amazing songs in here, especially the one with Mick Jenkins and Safe Word. So many amazing cuts on this album that I'm going to be returning to for years to come. So then we go to Tierra Whack with Worldwide Whack. This was originally my rap album of the year. And while it probably is not that anymore, I mean, it's still in the top 20 for a reason. And this is her debut album, technically. And it really just shows that she is still a really quirky, off-the-wall personality, but it still gives these... With that quirkiness, it allows those vulnerable and moments of honesty to really hit that much more. I can think of 27 Club, Difficult. These two songs, really for me, especially Difficult, it really allows Tierra Whack to really show this emotional side that I really resonate with. And you do get some fun, kind of weirder bangers, like Shower Song I do enjoy. Misbehave is another one that I also really enjoy. That's more of a banger on this one. But this is a very unique sound of Tierra Whack. She's made her own unique path, especially in her career, but also in her songwriting and also in her music. And I think it really pays off on this record, and I'm excited to see where she goes, and hopefully we don't have to wait as long for the follow-up with this thing. And then finally, we made it. I'll just put Billie on here. Billie Eilish with Hit Me Hard and Soft. This may be her best album, especially when it comes to the vocal improvements. She is using a lot more of the more kind of grandiose and higher registers, but also putting the power and presence into her vocals now. And Birds of a Feather, maybe one of my favorite pop songs of the decade by the time this is done. The beat is so just absolutely just catchy. I love the way that it's paced. And the chorus is absolutely incredible. And I could totally see why it's climbing up the charts, I think, at this point. So that's my top 20 albums of the mid-year so far. There is a lot of them. And I reviewed over 100 records just in the mid-year. So I can only imagine by the time that we reach December, I'll probably have about like 200 reviews. So 50 albums, while it may be hard, it may honestly be hard to even drop down to 50. So what are your thoughts on all of these? Is there any albums that you think I've missed? What are some of your favorite albums of the year? What content do you want to see next? I'm kind of waiting on some albums. Denzel Curry is supposed to be dropping this week, so I'm really excited for that. You may not get a review for that, though, and probably till Monday. But this is a longer video. If you've watched the whole way through, I thank you very much for watching. I thank you very much for your time. And I will catch you on the flip side. Again, I didn't say it on video, but thank you so much for 100 subscribers. I honestly never thought that was going to happen until the Drake beef. But I am so incredibly happy that I reached it. We're about 104 subscribers now. And the G-Eazy video is almost at 1.5 thousand views. Why are we watching it? But I mean, it's my most viewed video on the channel, and I can't thank you enough for continuing to watch it. I can't believe that I have a video that's almost going to reach 1.5 thousand views. I never thought some videos would reach 100, honestly. So the channel's doing very well, and I'm hoping to keep consistent and keep delivering content. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you want to like, comment, you can do whatever you want. And have a good night.